I could talk about Doomsday with you for hours,
And
John.
we will.
Tom Holland was most recently in Spider-Man No Way Home, so now he has to appear in an Avengers movie. So
What does that mean for Sony or Spider-Man adjacent characters?
every word that is said in that scene, every visual we see suddenly got 10 times more important than anything that happens in Loki season 1. Marvel fans don't want to be surprised. They want their expectations to be fulfilled.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Sneak Peek, the weekly show on New Rockstars, where we look ahead to the future of fandom. I'm John Costa, and joining me today is Erik Voss.
Welcome, everyone. We are talking about Avengers Doomsday and really all the big Marvel news that we learned from CinemaCon this week at Las Vegas. It was so much fun. Eventful week. And Thursday was a big Disney day. We had an amazing stream over on the Break Room channel where we reacted to it in real time. And, you know, the first half of that stream was just some delightful discoveries of how much fun Stitch can be.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But we did get to some very interesting news about Avengers Doomsday that I want to talk with you about, John.
I love when we get two sentences that change everything. and that's sort of what happened on Thursday. We got a video call from Kevin Feige. Didn't surface online, but we heard what was said. He sort of changed, I guess, how I think about Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars.
Yeah.
He called in from the set of Doomsday and shared some interesting information.
Yeah, and you know what? That's kind of been the name of the game here at New Rockstars. We feast on two sentences of information.
That's where we make our best content. That's where we cook.
There's like old cartoons of like a family of paupers slicing a bean into little slices. That's New Rockstars. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Because like, I think Kevin Feige knows this. I don't think he's thinking of like, oh, Erik and John at New Rockstars are going to talk about this, but he's thinking about us collectively on YouTube. And that's why he speaks in code. Just one word from this hatted, nerdy studio head's mouth can change our entire framing. And it's kind of a fun game we play here. I think it's I don't know if it's a healthy relationship, but it is a relationship, and our whole existence is predicated on it.
That's right. I mean, we said this about the chairs, the Avenge chairs.
Yeah.
It felt tailor-made for doofuses online like us to talk about different people for 12 minutes at a time.
Yeah, it was such a weird day, and we're still living in that world because Kevin Feige confirmed. There's like two quotes really that we should pull apart. The first one is he said, "We revealed many, not all." And that's what he's saying. He's saying that there are more chairs to reveal, which we knew. And I think it was interesting how he said many, not all. I first heard many, if not all. But no. He said many, not all. And he didn't say most, not all. He said many, not all, which I don't know. Are we reading too much into that phrasing?
That was, if you look at the number of people that were announced, somewhere in the 30s, that's many.
I believe it was 27 to be precise.
27.
But it was 27 plus others that have been confirmed in the industry trades. For example, Chris Evans, Benedict Cumberbatch, Haley Atwell. And Haley Atwell was confirmed this week. I believe the Hollywood Reporter did a ranking of like 25 entertainment lawyers who are making this industry run. And the one who represents Haley Atwell basically set like a highlight list of like the clients, and one is like Mark Mylod, and he secured the deal for Mark Mylod being the showrunner or the director for the Harry Potter show on HBO, and then also Haley Atwell securing her deals for Avengers 5 and 6. And I'm just like, okay, thanks, dude.
I love when those slip ups happen. Like when a costume designer puts on their LinkedIn that they're doing Doctor Strange 3, and we're like, oh, that hadn't been announced yet.
At least 60% of the news we get ahead of movies was just based off of people updating their resumes and just ego. It's just people being like, I was the one who got that deal made. I was the one who did this for that movie. I need IMDb to know. And then we figure it out, and then we make, theories and news reports based off it. Okay, so last week, Jessica and I broke down who we think the additional chairs will be. At the top of the list was Mahershala Ali.
Love it.
John, are there any names that you think like must be in Doomsday? That I don't know. I don't even remember everyone we said, but are there just names that you're like, they can't do this movie without this person?
The biggest omission for me has to be Tom Holland.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys talked about Tom last week. Obviously, there's like weird rights issues that might be involved here. We just heard this week that Vincent D'Onofrio can't really appear in any Marvel movies. He can do television, but not movies because of some rights issues. So we don't know the deal between Sony and Disney there. But hey, if you're Sony, don't you want this guy in the biggest movie of all time?
Doesn't it feel weird? Do you think D'Onofrio might have gotten it mixed up in that like Spider-Man can't appear in Marvel TV, but like if Charlie Cox, Daredevil, can appear in a Sony movie, surely Vincent D'Onofrio can appear in a Sony movie.
Yeah, and that was such a strange quote. And you know, what does that mean for other Sony or Spider-Man adjacent characters?
Right.
I don't know. Obviously, Kingpin and Spider-Man have a history together. And when they sell these rights off, it's like, oh, yeah, these characters are kind of Fantastic Four, or these characters are kind of Spider-Man. And I guess Kingpin is one of those Spider-Man characters, but they must have different rights pertaining to all these different characters.
Yeah.
I don't know how interesting that is to people, but it changes how we look at our jobs, right? Where we're like, maybe he can't be in the movie.
Yeah, I feel like so far we have like shouted out the industry lawyers, and I feel like entertainment lawyers, this is your podcast. Come find us.
Come on the show.
Respond to us. Come on the show. We would love to interview you because I feel like you guys understand this industry better than anyone and how it really works. If you talk to Kevin Feige, he doesn't know how the rights really work. He's just kind of like, I think we have Hulk again. I think we have the X-Men again. It's really and honestly, the reason why it's so confusing is there's no set law. Even whether or not the studios have the rights to things are buried deep in the contracts, and just basically what two different studios lawyers negotiate they have the rights to. It's not written down. It's confusing by design.
That's why I say put him in the movie and let the lawyers figure it out after the release.
Right. Ask for forgiveness and a lower settlement in the lawsuit that inevitably comes out of it. Halle Berry said on a red carpet this week that she is not going to be in Doomsday. A couple times. People kept asking her. Chris Hemsworth was at her side at one point, and he goes, "What?" Like he was surprised that she was going to be in it. I don't know if I believe it.
They had a conversation 5 minutes before that was like, "Can't wait to get to London."
Yeah.
She was like jazzed about it. And he was like, "Wait, hold on."
Yeah, I don't know if we could take her at her word because I think the ink is still drying on some of these contracts, or the lawyers are still hashing it out. So who knows if she shows up in Doomsday? Who knows if they hold her for Secret Wars? But I do think when Kevin Feige says that the original X-Men, I think Halle Berry has to be included in that.
You got to make the deal.
You got to make the deal.
And I understand that makes it really hard for the studio because I'm sure the agents and the lawyers are sort of like, hey, give us all the money you possibly can because you have to have us in this movie.
Yeah.
And good for those actors. They deserve it. But there's just people that if you're doing the original X-Men, you have to have. And it seems like they're getting a lot of them, but there's some certain omissions, right?
It would feel incomplete without her.
Yeah.
And we rewatched the 2000s and 2010s era X-Men movies. There's 13 of them. We last year did a breakdown of every single one of those movies, and they're really great videos. Really what you discover while watching those breakdowns and what we discovered while researching and writing and shooting them is how dirty they did Cyclops and Storm.
Yeah.
They get a lot of screen time. Halle Berry was a huge star. So they wrote big roles for her, but they were thinly written roles. And Halle Berry made the most of them. But and a lot of this is due to Bryan Singer and Brett Ratner. There was reports that I believe one of the people who was originally, it was Matthew Vaughn, right? Matthew Vaughn, ahead of promoting Kingsman, the Secret Service or something like that, or the Kingsman at New York Comic Con in 2023 said that he originally pitched or he walked off the set of what are you doing, doggy?
What are we doing?
The dog's like, you can't tell this story. You can't tell the story.
This wasn't meant for publication.
Yeah. But apparently there was some unnamed Fox executive who got Halle Berry to sign on to X-Men 3, X-Men The Last Stand, with a phony script that would have shown an origin story of Aurora Monroe.
That's disgusting behavior.
And how she originally, her mutant origin in Kenya. And that script was never going to be part of it. And then as soon as Halle Berry walked out of the room, reportedly, according to Matthew Vaughn, that Fox executive took the script and performatively dropped it in the trash.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if that was just Matthew Vaughn doing a bit of damage control based off of some of his humor and things like the first Kingsman movie and certain jokes that movie ends with. I don't know if that's the case, but it just seems like interesting that this story is only coming out now. But either way, I agree with the sentiment that like we were overdue a live action origin moment for Aurora Monroe. The writing that she received in X-Men 97, I would love a live action Storm exploration of that character.
And I think that the MCU is doing that well for other people, right? Like specifically Deadpool and Wolverine gave a lot of great moments to a lot of characters who had been kind of done dirty in the past. And so, you know, I don't know, maybe you can, someone like Halle Berry can look at that and say like, oh yeah, you know, I can fly to London for a couple of weeks, have a nice redemptive moment for this character that I have a personal relationship with, but maybe left on bad terms, and fix that a little bit. Who knows?
Yeah. We know from concept art that the Russo brothers have said we're allowed to talk about, because it's not their concept art, that some of the concept that was pitched for Avengers Doomsday and maybe Avengers Secret Wars includes a new T'Challa, an alternate T'Challa that's in Battle World. And we know that T'Challa, or versions of T'Challa, have a relationship with Aurora Monroe. And I think it'd be kind of cool to explore that in Battle World. We're talking about multiversal versions of these characters. Now we know Aurora Monroe from the continuity of the Fox movies doesn't really have that relationship with Black Panther. However, there was a moment in X-Men Origins, the Wolverine, where Wolverine's group, with that version of Wade Wilson, there was a deleted scene where there's going to be a young Storm, a young Aurora Monroe, when they're in Africa and they're trying to get their hands on a certain type of metal or mineral that might have been vibranium that they were trying to get, and maybe that could have connected to Aurora Monroe in that way. So there are always plans to do this.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that Marvel Studios always wants to give fans you know, representations of their favorite relationships or characters or whatever from the comics in the movies whenever they can fit them into, you know, an appropriate story. So I wouldn't be surprised if Marvel was like, yeah, we want to put T'Challa and Storm together. I think that's something fans have wanted for years.
And that's something that we might only get in the next 5 years if they meet in Secret Wars or in Doomsday.
Or in 15 years when everything is new and different.
Right. Or in the Mutant Saga, but it's still years from now. So I think Vincent D'Onofrio could still be in some of these movies and could still meet Spider-Man. One of the things we talked about earlier this week was Brand New Day, and the question of, okay, so the title's called Brand New Day. Brand New Day refers to this aftermath period from One More Day where Peter Parker's timeline kind of gets reset by Mephisto, warps reality so that, you know, Aunt May didn't die, so that Harry Osborn is alive again, and that Peter and MJ are not together. And there's kind of this period for a few years where like Mr. Negative is a big character, and Brand New Day is just referred to this kind of reset period where a lot of new people come into Peter Parker's life. And then finally, Joe Quesada wrote a sequel to One More Day called One Moment in Time that kind of fixes things. It revisits the events of Peter Parker and MJ's wedding.
Our bad.
Right. And you know, One Moment in Time anagram is omit, you know, just referring to how Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson's wedding was omitted from those events. But now it fixed it, and a lot of people liked it. And then after that, we get into things like Spider Island, you know, a lot of crazy stuff that could tie in to the Brand New Day movie. The question is, do we think the Manhattan that Peter Parker occupies in Brand New Day will be in Battle World, or will it just be a street level thing that's in the 616 universe before the incursion events of Doomsday come in? Is it going to be like a prequel to Doomsday? Is it going to be separate from the events of Doomsday? Because it is coming out 3 months after Doomsday is.
We talked a little bit, I think on our live stream that, you know, Ant-Man and the Wasp takes place before Avengers Infinity War. So it's not like Marvel Studios, you know, has to release every single movie in chronological order. So there's a very good chance that this movie could take place before Doomsday does. Now, the problem there is that, like, you don't want to spoil the movie that's coming out in 3 months with some information that happened in Doomsday. So I don't know, you know, the omission of Tom Holland's name in the Avenged Chairs stream makes me think that they do want to do like a street level movie with Tom Holland's Spider-Man character, and maybe he won't be in Avengers Doomsday, or maybe we just get variants of different Peter Parkers that look like Tom Holland, and we don't deal with 616 Spider-Man. That being said, yeah, I think that Manhattan in the 616 has to be in Battle World somewhere. There's too many like landmark events that have taken place in Manhattan in the 616 that you can't really leave it off the table. Now, what does that look like? I have no idea. Do you just pull like the Statue of Liberty from some really key moments in various universes? You've talked about this in a bunch of different videos. Or do you pull all of Manhattan as a big city? So yeah, I don't know.
What if you have a Liberty Island that's kind of like the center part of Battle World, and there's like 8 to 12 different statues of Liberty that are all sticking out like spokes from that island.
The incursions.
One has Cap shield and is copper colored.
I think that's great.
One is got like Magneto's kind of extension from the 2000 X. You could make this work. Steal this concept art and put it at least in the book that comes out afterwards, even if you don't use it.
There you go. So we can point and say we were right.
So we can say, yeah, we had that idea. I think that just again, bring in the entertainment lawyer. We need lawyer corner, legal corner, because like the deal that Sony and Marvel Studios, Sony and Disney inked for Tom Holland is that he will appear it's like one for them, one for us.
Right.
Like Tom Holland was most recently in Spider-Man No Way Home. So now he has to appear in an Avengers movie. So I just don't see a legal scenario where Tom Holland sits out of Doomsday. I think like part of the deal of sharing him that they've signed is that he has to appear in Doomsday. I don't know. I think that's why all these trades have just assumed that Tom Holland is going to appear in Doomsday. Why we've assumed that he's going to appear in Doomsday. I don't think you can sit him out. And I think it can't just be a Spider-Man. It can't be a Gwen or a Miles. I think it has to be Tom Holland's Peter Parker.
I agree. Especially because we have a history with that Spider-Man, right? We don't have a Gwen that we have a history with, or at least a Spider-Gwen that we have a history with. And that sort of thing. And there were rumors, and this story has changed hands so many times between different writers and different directors, and probably even different producers at the studio, that like it's hard to filter through these rumors and these types of things. But there were rumors that this movie, whether it be Doomsday or Kang Dynasty or whatever permutation it was, that Tom Holland's Spider-Man was going to be a leader of one of these teams.
I want to remind you for a second of one of the great underappreciated characters of the MCU, Ralph Boner. Remember how happy we were when Ralph Boner showed up in WandaVision, and how happy we all were to see that Boner again and Agatha all along?
It's witch repellent.
If one Boner can get that much joy to an entire fan base, imagine what a steady supply of Boners will do for your personal life. Oh, also, did I mention that today's video is sponsored by Blue Chew? Because it is. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable tablets and at a fraction of the cost. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA and prepared and shipped direct to your door in a discreet package. It's super easy too. You just sign up at bluechew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. It's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. You can take Blue Chew anytime, day or night. That way you can plan ahead or be ready for whenever an opportunity arises. If you're skeptical or don't think you need it, try it free for a month and see. Make life easier by getting harder and discover your options at bluechew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try your first month of Blue Chew free when you use promo code Rockstars. Just pay the $5 in shipping. That's promo code Rockstars. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's video.
And one of the other quotes that Kevin Feige had at CinemaCon was sort of like breaking down, hey, Avengers Doomsday, this was the quote, Avengers Doomsday will focus on the Avengers, Wakandans, Fantastic Four, Thunderbolts, and the original X-Men, all fighting Dr. Doom. So, I guess Tom Holland would fit into the Avengers category in that instance. Is he going to be the leader of the Avengers? I don't know. If you look at the cast that's already been announced that would sort of fit into the Avengers, grouping, you've got Chris Hemsworth, Paul Rudd, Benedict Cumberbatch, Haley Atwell, Robert Downey Jr. Nope. Well, potentially. Tom Hiddleston as Loki, maybe. Simu Liu, and Anthony Mackie. I don't think that Tom Holland's Spider-Man leads that group. right? There are other leaders in that group that I think take the forefront. So it's possible that he's just not, either a main actor or character in this film, or is just not going to be in it.
Yeah. I don't think he would be a leader in this instance. I think he would just be support. And
potentially, I didn't read Chris Evans' name. Again, he's been rumored to be cast. There's a few actors in here that like could potentially play different characters, right? Like if we had gotten a chair that had Michael B. Jordan's name on it, you're like, okay, probably Killmonger, but also could be Johnny Storm. We don't know. And so that's the case with a few of these people.
You know what's crazy? I just realized I don't think that in the live action MCU, Peter Parker and Thor have really had a moment together.
I think like
they were in the same scene. They were in the Battle of Earth in Avengers Endgame, and they were part of the same charge toward Thanos' forces, and they were both at the take a knee moment when Iron Man died. So I think like we're overdue a moment where Thor like electrifies Peter Parker's webbing or something like that. I would love to see that. Like they're part of the same charge. I don't think they ever say anything to each other. There's just too many characters, and they wanted to prioritize Peter Parker's like relationships with, Tony Stark. Right. There's a moment with Carol Danvers. There's a moment with, obviously Ned. I believe he's there with like Pepper Potts, when Tony dies. But I think Thor is just standing nearby and he cries. I just think that's interesting. But yeah, you mentioned the 5 teams: the Avengers, Wakandans, Fantastic Four, Thunderbolts, and original X-Men, all fighting Doctor Doom. Okay, so
which means no Guardians,
not included.
No Eternals, no Defenders,
no Young Avengers,
yeah. no one from like the Marvels group. Although I don't know if you would consider them like a team.
Yeah. Now the Young Avengers could be lumped in with the Avengers, right? So like we could see a Kamala Khan, we could see a Kate Bishop, and Kate Bishop, Haley Steinfeld was at a red carpet event, and some fan did ask her, "Are you going to be in Avengers Doomsday?" And she clearly looked at someone else in the crowd and nodded. And a lot of people online are like, "Haley Steinfeld confirmed."
It was her publicist in the background saying, "Don't answer." She's like, "Got it."
Okay, will not answer. So we don't know. But there's been concept art that like they're hanging out with Star-Lord. They could just be lumped in with the Avengers. Like we don't know. Maybe the Guardians of the Galaxy, the rest of the Guardians of the Galaxy won't be in this movie, but like Chris Pratt, since he's on Earth,
right?
Peter Quill is on Earth. He could help out the Avengers. But the original X-Men could just be the ones that we've seen. There could be other ones that haven't been mentioned yet, in addition to Halle Berry. Famke Janssen has not been... Wait, has she been confirmed?
No,
she has not been confirmed. Anna Paquin has not been confirmed.
Shawn
Ashmore has not been confirmed yet.
The full list of original X-Men that we have confirmed is Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, Alan Cumming, Rebecca Romijn, James Marsden, Kelsey Grammer, and then Channing Tatum, kind of, right? Like, I don't know, original X-Men, sure.
Yeah, I think that also, by calling it the original X-Men, I think that means that, like, the new cast, which unfortunately means Evan Peters will probably not be in Doomsday.
Agreed.
Which is a bummer. I mean, it's a bummer for Evan Peters. I don't know if I need Ty Sheridan. I don't know if I need Sophie Turner.
I don't think so either. And I guess my big question is like, is Marvel Studios going to do anything with that group of X-Men? Or is it sort of like, hey, yeah, we did, we're more sort of like in love with the original cast, the 2000 X-Men. And we did Days of Future Past and all those other movies with the new cast. But like, they had their time in the sun and we're just doing this for now and then we're going to move on.
I think by putting Evan Peters in WandaVision and in Agatha,
it scared them.
I think that's as much as they're going to do with this actor. Or, I mean, they'll bring him back in other roles as Ralph Boner, but I don't think they're going to bring back his Quicksilver any more than just kind of the cosplaying he did in WandaVision, which is kind of a bummer because his Quicksilver was a lot of fun in those movies. But I think that means no Fassbender, no McAvoy.
Agreed.
I mean, maybe cameos in the multiverse, but I don't think I think in terms of cameos, they're spending their budget on, the James Marsdens, the Alan Cummings, and to be fair, I think when people think of those characters in that franchise, that's what they're thinking of. I think a lot of people stopped watching after Days of Future Past.
Right. So I guess that means that Deadpool is really the only person in that continuity that is, in these movies, right? Deadpool is.
Oh, or Deadpool
is from the future.
So here's what's confusing. Deadpool exists in universe 10005, which is Wolverine's universe. And I think we have to assume that that is the post Days of Future Past universe. So when Wolverine came back to the present, or the future, he wakes up in the mansion at the end of Days of Future Past, and Charles Xavier's there, Aurora is there, Scott and Jean are there, Beast walks by. That's in 2024, and that is the future he lives in now. And that is not the universe of Evan Peters and Sophie Turner. Now you're going to say, wait, the Deadpool 2 cameo.
This is what was tripping me
the
up.
The Deadpool 2 cameo breaks it.
Maybe just
and I think that
a logic
is
break.
Just
it's a Deadpool thing.
It's a joke. I think that has to just be a joke, and maybe it's just like that is a moment that like Deadpool is breaking the fourth wall in that moment and imagining these mutants over in this other room, but they're not actually there. I think he's like, it's amazing they couldn't get other cameos. Cut to McAvoy in the chair and all of them in the other room, and then they close the door. I think that's just like Deadpool is known to hallucinate things, and I think he was hallucinating that in that moment. I don't think that group is hanging out with Negasonic Teenage Warhead and Colossus by Stefan Kapicic. And I never know how to say your name, Stefan. I'm really sorry about that. That's just mine. I think that's the only way we can make sense of that if Deadpool and Wolverine is saying that he's in 10005.
And I think that's fair. Deadpool movies, you don't always have to take literally, right? So
I think they didn't become literal until the MCU version where Paradox says he's from universe 10005. And definitely, I think before all this happened, the universe of X-Men Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix was meant to be 10005, but an earlier period of time. Whereas Deadpool is not set in the early 90s. He's not set in the 80s. He is set in the present day universe where they have smartphones and cars that look like the way they do. It's very hard to interpret it, but I just think we have to just trust Deadpool and Wolverine and not any of the logic that we understood to be the logic before that.
Especially because Deadpool and Wolverine now seems like more and more is setting up the events of Doomsday Secret Wars, right? We got the comic issue for Secret Wars in Doomsday, in Deadpool and Wolverine, but more importantly, they introduced anchor beings. Which, we think is a good stand-in for Molecule Man, and having different anchor beings in different universes. They sort of told us basically like these are the Molecule Men of the different universes, right?
Yeah. So like part of what it's so hard to kind of do this.
It is
because Marvel Studios doesn't know what they're doing, I think is what we're finding.
I love that to a degree.
Love that.
Because right, like you could say the same exact thing about phases 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
Right. Where it's like, oh, we kind of had to like Marcus and McFeely had this like impossible task of looking at all of the movies that predated Infinity War. And we're like, okay, how do we make the Infinity Saga wrap up with all of this story that we've already told? And now they're doing the same thing with Secret Wars. They're sort of saying like, oh, hey, we can pull this from here. We can pull that from here. And we can kind of make our own version of Secret Wars. I think that that's exciting when you sit down in a theater and you can say like, oh, great, Thor the Dark World ended up being like really integral to this story. And we're going to say the same thing about, all the phase 4 and 5 movies.
Yeah. I think if we kind of have to now rethink the way we've been looking at phase 4 and 5 of the MCU, because we used to be able to say, well, this random episode of WandaVision or this one episode of Loki, Mobius says this, or, White Vision said this, or, there was this episode of She-Hulk where the DODC was doing this. And I feel like all of that is now back burner supporting evidence. The most important titles to look at when it comes to Marvel signaling to us what their plans are for Doomsday and Secret Wars are Deadpool and Wolverine, and turns out the post-credit scene of the Marvels. Who would have thought that scene with Monica Rambeau meeting an alternate universe version of her mother as binary and Beast? Every word that is said in that scene, every visual we see suddenly got 10 times more important than anything that happens in Loki season 1. And that seems crazy to me because Loki season 1 seems so confident in what they were doing. But I think Marvel Studios is now kind of looking all of that and taking it with a bit more of a grain of salt. And you have to have more of a recency bias and your theory casting. And I'm not crazy about that because I think, in my opinion, Loki season 1 and 2 are gospel. I love the world building that was done in those shows and those seasons, those episodes. But the fact of the matter is, Marvel Studios is now just prioritizing, like, it's just crazy. It seemed like a lot of the plans were being set in Multiverse of Madness. Like, I look at everything the 838 Illuminati says as gospel in terms of explaining what incursions are. Yeah. Now I feel like I don't know if Marvel Studios considers that as important as Deadpool and Wolverine.
I imagine we're going to get a lot of the word incursion in Fantastic Four first steps, right? Yeah. Like, again, we don't know that this is 100% the case, but it seems like their universe is going to be hit with an incursion and they're going to have to leave. You know, in Secret Wars, Reed Richards builds this like life raft stuff, and maybe that's kind of where they're going at the end of this movie. I don't know, but yeah, I think that we're going to learn a lot more about the like universe or the multiverse that we're working with in Fantastic Four first steps. I think they're going to give us a good lore dump, or at least I hope so.
Yeah. I think we need one. I think we will get one in the movies. I don't think we're going to get it in like Ironheart or Wonder Man or in Daredevil Born Again season 2. However, I do believe Daredevil Born Again is moving in a direction of the New York of this universe coming into like a heightened state where it becomes more of a comic book universe rather than a grounded universe, which, you know, we'll see how you feel about that. But I think it will set things up to where Kingpin could show up in Doomsday. He could be kind of like a king of Manhattan in some ways.
Yeah.
Because that's Muse's artwork has been kind of warning us that he's going to be a king. That's what he's trying to do.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even down to like Hector's necklace or amulet, sort of like in the past, I feel like the MCU has been really careful about explaining things that are like mystic, right? Or magical. And in this case, they were just sort of like, yeah, he's got a magical amulet. That's his vibe. And so I agree. I think they're trying to shift the grounded reality to something that's a little bit more heightened. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. So going back to Feige's quote, Avengers Doomsday will focus on the Avengers, the Wakandans, the Fantastic Four, Thunderbolts, and original X-Men all fighting Dr. Doom. I'm trying to imagine how that sets up the plot structure of the movie. Right. We made a video in the past week how Doomsday could open with like Dr. Doom confronting God of Stories Loki. The fact that Tom Hiddleston's name was one of those chairs is a big deal. It tells us that Dr. Doom's going to use the existing TVA architecture, including the sacred timeline, whatever is now in place of the loom, this Yggdrasil shape, the existing structure of the TVA as we saw it in Deadpool and Wolverine, paradoxes, goals, the anchor beings, logic, and then the void. The void as like the fertile ground upon which Dr. Doom could build Battleworld. He'll be using all of that. Now, do we think, though, that the Avengers, the Wakandans, the Fantastic Four, Thunderbolts, and original X-Men will be kind of a multi-front war? Or do we think that the structure of this movie could be going zone by zone and each of these groups losing? Like they lose the battle and then some survivors join, they go to the next place. It's almost like Thanos going place to place to place.
I was thinking similar.
And knocking them out.
Right.
And some of them rejoin the battle at the end, but like we could see like the way Dr. Doom is building the chunks of Battleworld using the home ground of the Avengers, using Wakanda as it's left, using the alternate universe of the Fantastic Four. I don't know what the Thunderbolts are going to be defending. Celestial Island? Well, Tiamat show up in Battleworld?
Interesting, right? Like there's talking about all these incursions, there's 5 groups, but only 3 universes, right? Mm-hmm. You've got the X-Men universe, you've got 616, and then you've got whatever designation the Fantastic Four are going to come from. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's like, okay, but also, you know, if the Avengers feel like the primary protagonists of the 616, you also have the Wakandans, you also have the Thunderbolts. So I'll be interested to see kind of like how those groups all play with one another, considering 3 of them all come from the same place and have all really interacted with one another. Yeah. How do you separate them? They all have preconceived understandings of one another. Now, in the 2015 Secret Wars run, people on Battleworld didn't know that they had come from like a home planet or whatever. They all sort of knew that Battleworld was all that they had known. So maybe there's going to be some kind of like mind warping thing that happens there that kind of like puts them into teams or something. I'm not totally sure, but I can't kind of square how like the Avengers will be separated from the Wakandans or be separated from the Thunderbolts, considering, you know, Yelena is kind of an Avenger, but kind of a Thunderbolt at the same time.
Yeah, I wonder if now we're going to see the Avengers represent if like Sam Wilson and Joaquin Torres are kind of leading the Avengers. Doctor Strange can show up anywhere. He's in the dark dimension with Clea right now. He can show up anywhere and he can help out the Thunderbolts. I think we're going to see a Manhattan group of Marvel heroes, and that Peter Parker may join the Thunderbolts as they're still in Manhattan.
Fun.
And then the Avengers, as we know them, could be like a West Coast group that includes Joaquin and Sam and Simu Liu, Shang-Chi and She-Hulk could get in there defending Celestial Island. Like, I feel like they set up that setting in Brave New World for a reason. They wanted Adamantium to be like part of the Brave New World of Adamantium. Like, doesn't Brave New World and Brand New Day, it kind of feels like they're saying certain things. Like, they set up Adamantium for a reason. And I don't think it's just for the Mutant Saga beyond these events. I feel like Adamantium is going to be an important, like, source. If you imagine the Hunger Games cornucopia, like Tiamat could be that for Battleworld. Like a Tiamat made of adamantium could be an important asset for Battleworld. It could be part of what Doctor Doom wants the 616 world for, is we have this source of adamantium that's just sticking out like a pimple on our planet that he could be using to build the suit of armor around the world or build his Doom bots or whatever it is. So I don't know. I don't know. Like, I feel like it's on the West Coast side. If it's in the Indian Ocean, it's closer to the West Coast side of everything.
You make a really good point, right? Because we don't get a lot of West Coast stuff out of Marvel Studios. Most recently with Shang-Chi, we were in San Francisco, but and you know, the first Iron Man movies were all set in Los Angeles. But apart from that, I'm struggling to think of any like key locations that have been on the West Coast. Even in Shang-Chi, like they were just in San Francisco. It wasn't like they were using, I mean, they use a bus. They don't even use like, you know, I don't know, they don't fight on the Golden Gate Bridge like you would probably expect. So there aren't any like key locations to pull from the West Coast unless my memory is deceiving me here.
Yeah, I mean, the West Coast Avengers have a few different headquarters. There was the actress, like the old Hollywood actress, her mansion gets used as like the base. And that actress was mentioned on a poster in Clint's apartment in Hawkeye. Okay. So I don't know if that was an Easter egg setting up what we might see in Wonder Man or in Ironheart, you know, like a West Coast Avenger headquarters.
Maybe Wonder Man plays into this.
Could, yeah, he totally could. We might see, like, Doomsday could open if Sentry and OXC is taking over the old Avengers Tower, turning it into the Watchtower and Thunderbolts. It sets up the Avengers as needing a new base of operations. The Avengers used the Celestial Dreamer, you know, his like a celestial corpse as their base at one point in the past 15 years of the comics. They could use Tiamat. Like, maybe we go inside of Tiamat at the beginning of Doomsday and we see like they go inside of its brain. It's like this cool adamantium base, and like Doctor Strange is there, Wong is there, Bruce Banner is there, Carol Danvers is there, and then since like Sam and Joaquin were flying around outside of it, we see their base inside of it, because I believe there was like a draft or like a scene that was pitched for Brave New World that would have gone inside Tiamat, and they decided not to do it. So maybe that's what Doomsday does. It was, we see the new Avengers headquarters inside Tiamat, and it's just like this badass cool base that's armed with adamantium.
Very cool. Yeah. Because I'm not sure, you know, you talk about all the different domains that will exist in Battleworld. I imagine we'll get some that we're not familiar with, right? We'll get some new locations, but you know, you're right. I think it will be made up of a bunch of locations that we've seen previously, and it'd be cool to explore them in ways that we haven't seen before. But I agree. I think, like, you know, the Avengers campus in upstate New York could be we could lift the Battle of Earth rubble or something like that and put that in Battleworld. We could lift the Watchtower and put that in Battleworld. It'd be fun to see some of the locations that we've come to know and love in different lights.
You know, I think what we're going to have to do here at New Rockstars HQ is get a map board.
Yeah.
And start assembling settings. And we can have, like, you know, have our true Steve Kornacki board and have, like, we think we will see the Westchester X-Mansion campus.
Totally.
From some universe. We think we'll see a Liberty Island from at least some universes. We think Tiamat. We think Sentry's Watchtower. We think the Baxter Building from whatever that universe is.
Let's get Atlantis in there.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Wakanda.
Yeah.
The Void or the TVA. I think the whole thing will be the Void or the TVA.
Makes sense.
And we can just start like building in wedges of Battleworld of like, and I think this will just be a living thing that we have here on the set. we'll get to work on it. But like, I feel like there's settings that the reason the Russo brothers want to do this is like they want to see these settings again. And I think that is one thing that MCU hasn't had before is like kind of a living world that connects like a map that you play in Fortnite or something like that. And we know the Russo brothers have this kind of arrangement with Fortnite or Epic Games. Like they want to like work more with them and make this a playable world that you can live in. I mean, why not do that?
One question I have for you that while I was doing this research, I was like wanting to ask you about is, they announced a list of actor names, not character names.
Yeah.
We have this like, okay, it's going to be the Avengers, Wakandans, Fantastic Four, Thunderbolts, and original X-Men fighting Doctor Doom. That makes me think that it's the variants that we've already seen, known, grown to love. Do you think that we're going to see a ton of variants of any of these characters from different universes as well? Or do you think it's primarily going to be, maybe that's something they say for Secret Wars and Doomsday is like, hey, we're just going to work on the characters that you are familiar with?
That's a really good question.
Because like, how Reed Richards or Pedro Pascal was the second to last name revealed. It makes sense that Reed and Doom are going to be going head to head. Do we get the maker version of Reed Richards in any of these movies?
I think if it's relatively new characters or just surprise returning characters, I think all the X-Men names, they're going to be playing the X-Men that we know or variants of them, the way Patrick Stewart played kind of a variant from A3. Hugh Jackman. Yeah. Played a kind of a drunk version of
not quite the one that we know.
Yeah. I think the one name on that list that they might have been playing with us on is Robert Downey Jr. I think we might see a variant Tony Stark played by Robert Downey Jr. He might not only be playing Doctor Doom. He could play an alternate Tony Stark, a superior Iron Man Tony Stark or something like that.
We had that quote from the Russos saying that Tony Stark's death was going to be relevant to Doctor Doom's story in these movies, right? And it's hard to quite focus in on what that could mean.
Yeah.
His death
I missed that
specifically.
quote. I missed where they said his deaths, or were they saying like there was a reason, like there's a specific reason why they cast Robert Downey Jr. and we're not ignoring the fact that he played Tony Stark. Like,
I read too far into that.
But no, I think you're right. I think that is what they were saying. I think they're saying like, we know what we're doing. We're not just bringing him back because he's like,
we like him
Robert Downey Jr., big movie star. Like, there's a plot reason that we're going to address the fact that he played Tony Stark, and that like that's why we cast him as Victor Von Doom. Is there's some kind of plot angle. We speculated that plot angle in a lot of videos, but yeah, I think that's really the big question. What does new mask, same task mean? And we have, I think, a lot of good guesses. I think like they're not that much smarter than I think the general Marvel fan is. Like they said, Fantastic Four first steps. Like it has some other meaning. And all of us are like, okay, the first steps of a baby.
The baby?
And that's exactly what it is. I think I've talked about this before. Marvel fans don't want to be surprised. They want their expectations to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think like the whole idea of like, oh, you spoiled it. Marvel fans want to read into the leaks. Like, yes, there's some people who want to be surprised, but it's not like, this isn't like, going into an M. Night Shyamalan movie or a Christopher Nolan movie or even a J.J. Abrams movie where like you really want the twist to hit you by surprise. I think Marvel fans want to read the comics and they just want those comic splash pages to be adapted.
Totally.
And like so many Marvel fans wanted Cap to pick up Mjolnir at some point. And it wasn't like we were surprised. We were just happy to see our expectations fulfilled.
Yeah, agreed. We had a conversation in the office yesterday about like the biggest movie theater moments we had been a part of. And for me, that was, the very first showing of Spider-Man No Way Home at the Chinese Theater here in Los Angeles. And when every single person in that theater pretty much knew Andrew Garfield was going to show up in that movie at some point. When he came through that portal, it was so loud that like 30 seconds of dialogue could not be heard.
Right.
And so, yeah, people just want like the big moments. And, I think what spoils people is the how and not the what. Right.
Yeah.
So, that's what is exciting to me about Doomsday and Secret Wars is like, okay, I generally kind of know what we're gonna see, but I'm excited to see the how.
Yes. And the how is harder to spoil because you kind of have to it's reading a paragraph, you know, and you can't just see a picture and understand the how. Like you couldn't just see a picture of Toby and Andrew in those leaks and know the how of it. Like there was complicated multiverse magic. There was something called the Runes of Kafkal, a spell that borders, known and unknown realities that we still don't really know how it works. Sony doesn't know how it works. So I think the how is more interesting because the how gets into how Peter Parker has this kind of one more day-esque wish that he wishes he could be anonymous again. And I think that's far more interesting. All right. I could talk about Doomsday with you for hours,
and
John.
we will.
We'll get to all of it. But I think we've kind of covered a lot of ground here. But let us know in the comments below, what are your questions now based off of Kevin Feige's statements at CinemaCon? And as we start to learn more casting news, are there other people who we think are lying to us when they say they're not in the movie?
Yeah.
We're avoiding kind of leaks or set photos or anything like that. But if you have questions about other stuff, we're kind of curious to know your thoughts. Looking ahead to the coming week on New Rockstars, we have a very, very busy week. We think we will get a release of the Fantastic Four trailer.
Please.
Hopefully.
Please, Marvel.
There was a trailer shown at CinemaCon to attendees. We hope it'll be made public. But we do have a description of that footage, some confirmations that Sue Storm is pregnant with Frank Lloyd Richards, and we're going to have a video about that coming up, just kind of explaining what we know about this movie based off of what came out from CinemaCon. Daredevil Episode 8 is coming out. Jessica and my reaction will be on Tuesday night. And then I'm going to be doing the Easter egg breakdown of that episode. That's coming to the channel on Wednesday.
It's very good.
It's a great episode.
It's a
we
very
saw
good
it.
episode.
We got to see it already. We have seen it. And we won't say anything more about it, but it's pretty good. And then whatever other big news comes out, we'll be covering it. However, Sunday night, a week from right now, will be the season 2 premiere of The Last of Us on HBO Max, or just Max. We have not watched this episode yet, or at least I have not. But our breakdown of that episode will be coming out on Monday the 14th. And we're so excited to have...
It's back.
It's back. It's going to be so good. I'm so pumped. All right. And then, yes, so on New Rockstars and on The Break Room, we'll be covering everything. Break Room, our episode 8 after show for Daredevil will be on Wednesday morning. So, yes, and I believe The Break Room plans on covering the finale of tonight's episode of White Lotus.
Ooh, an hour and a half. As of taping, we have not watched it. Who's dead? I don't know.
Which brings us to our final segment here. What we're watching. What else we're really watching on TV that doesn't have to do with this nerd stuff.
Eric and I only talk about 2 things, Marvel and Survivor.
That's right.
It's all and unfortunately right now we're in 2 different places in our Survivor watch. You're still catching up and I'm watching the new season.
Yeah.
What season are you on and what's going on?
I just finished, I believe it's season 26. This is Fans versus Favorites 2. And it's a wild season that brings back Brandon, who is Russell's nephew, who has a meltdown. It's a season that brings back Philip, who was a federal agent. Stealth R Us. I just think Stealth R Us is so ridiculous. I don't mind Philip. I think Philip gets a bad edit. This poor guy, he's kind of wild, but I love watching him operate. I don't liking him. I didn't like him in this first season where he's just screaming at people, but he was a bit more fun in the second season. What I'm not crazy about is whether it's Boston Rob or Russell Hantz, other players just copycatting and citing them as if they are geniuses, their strategies. And I like Boston Rob. I like watching him in whatever reality show he shows up in. When he comes back in the Russell versus Boston Rob season of Survivor, he did perfect a specific strategy. And I think Philip, to his detriment, thought that was the only way to play and win Survivor. And that strategy makes, and I think even the editors and producers of Survivor realize this, it makes for not good TV because Boston Rob had a dictator approach of not letting anyone talk to anyone.
Also, I would argue it's only a strategy that Boston Rob or very specific people can pull off because you have to be both incredibly charming and charismatic and also have that sort of like iron fist.
Right.
And Philip, in my opinion, is not someone who could pull that off because he doesn't have the charisma.
And you have to not be rattled easily.
Yeah.
Like Boston Rob, he'll let people talk shit about him. He doesn't get in fights with people. He's kind of just like, whatever you think, man. And he'll go to the camera and tell how he really thinks. Whereas Philip has to speak his mind at any given moment, and he'll get in fights with people.
And that is why I will never win Survivor. Is because I wouldn't be able to keep my mouth shut, malnourished and exhausted for, what do they do now? 29 days. I couldn't do it. I would absolutely accidentally say something that I shouldn't say.
I would too. I think I would run my mouth, or I would just like not realize how I'm coming off, and people would think that I'm mad at them, and I'm really not.
I'm just hungry.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I just didn't want to make small talk in this moment. I'm sorry. Specifically, everyone in my family has like a weird thing where if we hold weight in our hand, I'm even doing it now. See how I'm shaking? That is something everyone in my family has. So like any challenge where you have to like hold pieces together,
right?
My hand would, especially if I'm
tough.
nervous, I would start shaking. I would lose that. There's no way I can win that.
Oh, all those individual immunity challenges are basically like balance a ball in some way.
Right.
Yeah.
And they make more and more of those challenges. If it's just like endurance, like if you have to just like hold like your own body weight up long enough, I feel like I could hang in there, especially if I work out again. I could hang in there. Stuff where I have to run or swim. I'm a pretty good swimmer. I could do that. If you have to dive or hold your breath for a long time, that thing where you have to hold your face up.
That terrifies me.
I would dominate that.
That's so scary.
That's what we used to do in Florida growing up. In Florida, we would just do that.
Like almost drown.
We would hold like endurance challenges of like how long you could. In Boy Scouts, we'd have to do that. Like how long you can float. Like I'm great at that stuff.
Incredible.
But the social game, I feel like I'd be a good strategist, and I'd get in there, and they'd be like, get him out of there.
This is how I would
first.
If there were ever a season of Survivor, like the is it Rob and Malcolm relationship or whatever, where you have like I want to be in the background and telling an ally to like go do the dirty stuff, right? And I could just sit back and like be friends with people.
You use a human shield.
Yeah.
What I think I would be good at in the game is very quickly identifying who my 3 and my 5 are, because that I've found 26 seasons in, you have to have your 3, and then you have a 5. And then among those 5, 2 of them think they're the 3, and then the other 2 think they're the 3. And you have a true 3, but you can play them against each other. That number has been foolproof. I think I just watched a season where Cochran won. Yeah. And I think I have to say, Cochran, his first season, Ozzy was really mean to him. Was it Ozzy or was it someone else? I think it was Ozzy.
I don't know if I ever watched Cochran's first season.
Cochran's, he's like a Harvard, he's probably the prototypical game bot, I would imagine, from what I understand game bots are. And he is a Harvard law kid who wrote his like, thesis or dissertation on jury management and Survivor. Like he, I believe his yearbook quote was "The tribe has spoken." He's just a Survivor nerd,
and it's crazy to me that in a returnee season you don't vote that guy out early.
Well, I think he was such an underdog because he got just.
He did.
They were so mean to him because he flipped sides, and people were screaming in his face, and I thought it was undeserved. So everyone overlooked him, but he ended up dominating. He just won 4 challenges. And I'm like, okay, if you win that many challenges, and if you play that good of a social game, he showed that you don't have to use immunity idols. You don't have to do this Boston Rob approach of just like not allowing people to talk to each other, which I just think makes for bad TV because you never have social interaction that way. You just have like basically an absolute monarchy where people aren't even allowed to socialize with each other. They do a buddy system where you can't go out and have interactions with other people.
There's a wild Boston Rob scene in Survivor 40 that I'm excited for you to get to because it is like pure Boston Rob, and I wanted to throw something at my television.
Oh my God. Well, I'm very excited for that. So far, I'm halfway through basically the run of the show, and my favorite players to watch have been Sandra, Parvati, Boston Rob, now Cochran's up there. Wow. And I know Cochran never comes back. So I feel like there's gonna be other people. I hear this guy, Tony, he's showed up on the Traders. I feel like he's gonna be really good. I love watching Suri. Suri's really fun.
Love Suri.
Russell, his first season where he first keeps finding immunity idols, I thought was fun. But then how he becomes obsessive about immunity idols and what he did to the show and brought Brandon into the show, I think hurt Survivor overall. I'm not a big Russell fan.
You're in sort of like the doldrums era.
Okay.
Later it picks up again, and then you get COVID, and then the new era. And the new era, people have their complaints with, myself included, but those seasons I think are a little bit more fun than the era that you're approaching.
I've been enjoying it. Like there was the after Heroes versus Villains, like seasons 21 through 24, when it's just like the Russell versus Boston Rob season. I hated that season. I did not like One World. I think Colton is one of the most unwatchable people.
Oh my gosh, I love Colton. I've never hated someone so much. I say I love him, I hate him. Yeah. I've never hated someone so much on Survivor. Colton,
the way he plays the victim card, the way he uses his own, like I'm sure he's faced bigotry, but the way he uses that as an excuse to be a bigot, to be racist,
horrible.
Like I know Bill Posley. Bill Posley is a guy from the LA comedy scene, and he's one of the nicest people. And just to see Colton treat him that way, it was just really rubbed me the wrong way.
So you've only seen Colton's first season.
I'm now in Colton's second season. I'm now in Blood versus Water.
Blood versus Water.
We just started Blood versus, and I'm excited. There's a lot of returning people in Blood versus Water.
And Colton is also hateable in Blood versus Water, so that's fun.
I know there is a moment coming up where Jeff yells at Colton, and I'm very excited because I've seen like clips of just Jeff yelling at people.
Yeah.
Sassy failure Jeff in this challenge, completely useless in the pit, and I love Sassy Jeff.
Sassy Jeff is great. He's gotten a little softer as the years have gone on. And the episode that aired last week, man, I cried for like 15 minutes in that
my
episode.
God.
And so did Jeff.
Wow. So I'm probably a couple months away from that.
Yeah.
Just at the rate we're going.
I'm so excited. Catch up, and then next season you can come over and we can watch you can join the Survivor watch party so we can hang out. We
have to finish by Survivor 50.
I
hope we're gonna just fly through it. I'm just insisting that we watch as many episodes as we can every night. There was one lazy Sunday where we got through an entire season in a day.
That's beautiful.
And it was my favorite day.
What a great day.
We were so lazy. We didn't go outside. Our baby was just like, take me on a walk.
And we're just like, hold him.
Just play with us here.
Near the window so that he gets enough sunlight. Well, that's not the only thing that we're watching.
Oh, yes.
I mean, one of the other things that sort of lit New Rockstars alight this week was The Studio.
The Studio.
We're all loving The Studio. If you haven't watched it or don't know what it is, it's an Apple TV Plus show starring Seth Rogen and a bunch of other incredible actors about him being the new studio head at a fictional studio in Los Angeles. And look, we work in this industry. Maybe it's a case of like, we love it because we see ourselves in certain characters and things like that. But boy, has it been fun. And it is so well written and so well directed. And the cast is awesome. I've sort of said, like, it feels like the vibe of Master of None, but the content of like a modern day Entourage.
Yes.
Right? Like Entourage was so fun because it was filled with like in The Studio, Martin Scorsese's cameoing in episodes. Ron Howard is cameoing in episodes. They get like these great...
Anthony Mackie shows up.
Anthony Mackie is so fun in one of the episodes. Good. So, it feels like anyone could show up at any moment and like you'd have a blast. And obviously like Ron Howard plays this kind of larger than life version of Ron Howard in the third episode. But I love seeing that. It is so fun.
It reminds me of Veep and it reminds me of Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And
just the kind of pace and the wittiness of the dialogue and jokes. Yeah.
And just like how it is centered around these pretty powerful, privileged people who just nothing goes right for them.
Right.
Like Selena Meyer, I think is one of the great comedic characters of our time. And Richard from Silicon Valley is one of the great comedic characters. And I think there's similar just people as Matt, what's his name? Matt, whatever, Seth Rogen's character.
Or something like
that. It's very inside baseball, but it's a lot of what we talk about here at New Rockstars. It's our industry, but like I watched Veep not really knowing how Washington, D.C. works. I watched Silicon Valley knowing nothing about how Silicon Valley works. And I feel like The Studio is that for our industry. Entourage is like a very bro-y swingers
yes, it is
version
not
of that,
thankfully.
And all that's in the background, in the way that it's kind of in the background of Curb Your Enthusiasm. And it's very much in the foreground of The Studio. So if you're not really into all that, I don't know if it's your cup of tea, but I just think the actors in it are so good. and it's Seth Rogen just gets shit on so much in it, and just the anxiety of him trying to do a good job.
So much anxiety. But you're right. Like Veep, a lot of people in politics were sort of saying like, you actually don't understand how more accurate this Veep is than like The West Wing or whatever. And I feel that way about the studio. I'm like, oh yeah, this is probably exactly how all of these conversations are happening.
Yeah. I mean, Catherine O'Hara plays
incredible.
I think an Amy Pascal type. Like she is basically the way she's forced out.
Yeah.
And the way she gets this deal. And that's like kind of the Amy Pascal deal. Like no one in Hollywood got the deal Amy Pascal did. It's because she was forced out of Sony. And I think that's what Catherine O'Hara is doing on the show. Catherine Hahn, our beloved Agatha, plays
doing some wild stuff on that show.
so good.
She plays like a Gen Z marketing person, although she is, in her 40s or whatever. And it is so funny. And like, that is part of the joke that she, I guess, is like not of that generation.
Right.
And it is just like the combination of like cringe versus comedy is very fun.
It is, I think just 3 episodes in, it's I've been craving a good adult comedy since Veep, and I feel like we haven't had one. We've had very funny shows. I think Succession was very funny, but it ultimately was a drama. I think The Bear is not a comedy, but it keeps putting itself forth as a comedy. And things like Abbott Elementary have been pretty good. I think English Teacher has been pretty good. Superstore has been pretty funny, all these shows, but
like, I hate to say this, right? Like the studio takes the craft of filmmaking really serious, whereas those other shows are like, hey, this is a comedy and we're just giving you jokes. And like, that's great. That's awesome. But this show is also like, I haven't checked, but I think so far all of the episodes have been directed by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg. And so they seem like they're like, oh, we want to put all of our filmmaking juice into these shows. But one comedy that is coming back in a couple of weeks that I cannot wait for is The Rehearsal.
Yes.
And this season, I'm not totally sure, but it looks like instead of, like they did last season, there were like a couple of different rehearsal things, and then it sort of built to one long story. This seems like they're just doing one big weird like aviation story for The Rehearsal.
I have no idea, but I am going to watch every second of this. Nathan Fielder is one of the great comedic minds of our time.
Truly.
He between the seasons of The Rehearsal, he did The Curse, which is a fascinating show with Emma Stone that Christopher Nolan loves. I would not describe The Curse as a comedy. It's a weird satire, but it's so many different things.
It's sort of the opposite of the studio, where I was like, I don't know if I want to watch the next episode because it is so like the cringe of that show was so intense, but it is such a remarkable show.
The Curse is like a weird commentary on gentrification and reality TV and home makeover shows, but also just takes so many odd turns that are fascinating. The Rehearsal season 1 was on Max, and it's just about, it's like what John said. It's like him doing his Nathan For You sort of thing of like doing kind of rehearsing different life scenarios and creating different life scenarios on sound stages with paid extras and just allowing you to rehearse difficult life moments before you actually do them. But then it becomes kind of a Synecdoche, New York type thing where he's building a whole side universe of everything becomes a rehearsal for the rehearsal for the rehearsal. And Rehearsal season 2 seems like trying to do that for aviation disasters.
I am so fascinated. First of all, it feels like they would have started working on this season before every aircraft in the world started falling out of the sky.
In the past, like 3 months, right?
So that's crazy. But then also, I mean, the trailer's out. It seems like they're shooting on like the volume or something like the budget for the show seems way bigger than it should be.
They create like a fake airport terminal.
Yeah.
And the background of it does not look like, it looks like the set that they use for The Mandalorian. They use a LED background.
What I want is, when you go on the Warner Brothers studio tour and you drive past the War of the Worlds airplane crash, I hope we see that set somewhere in this show.
It's just wild.
Or an oceanic plane or something in the background.
Nathan For You and Nathan Fielder is just one of the great comedic minds of our time. And I think Hollywood gets it. I think like what people are realizing with Seth Rogen and how everyone wants to be part of this. And everyone wants to be part of like John Mulaney's show. Like there's just these nerds who have like gotten to the corner of American comedy. And I'm just very excited for everything they make. Nathan Fielder's one of them. He's just a very unhinged human being and a crazy mind. So that's what we're watching. A lot of stuff. But let us know what you're watching in the comments below. John, this has been, one of the all-time best episodes of the Sneak Peek. I'm happy to say. I'm not afraid to say that. This has been great. So
this has been a lot of fun.
Subscribe to all the channels in the New Rockstars Network. John is wearing one of our new Fantastic Four designs that you can get at nerdride.shop. It's a fantastic car design.
We found a real ad for 1960s Chrysler, maybe, and we just sort of like flipped it into a Fantastic Car thing.
That's
it's very
so cool.
I really like this one. You've got Reed and Sue here trying to sell you the Fantastic Car. It says built for the first family, fantastic for you.
That's great.
Except we didn't put a U in there.
Yeah, because people would think it's a misprint.
We also should shout out one of our newest members of New Rockstars, Frederick Price, who's an executive producer of this show and all of our videos that we do on New Rockstars. If you'd like to become a member, you hit that little join button. We have 3 tiers of membership, and they're all great, in our opinion.
Yeah, and this is just something, if you're able to support us at that level, we'll give you a shout out like that, because we know that's a hugely generous thing to do. And we're just very grateful for that kind of support. Just hit that join button and you'll see what the options are there. John, again, this has been a delight.
Thanks for having me here.
Thanks for being here, John. And we'll be back next week on the Sneak Peek to talk about the future of Marvel and everything we learned in the next week. Thanks for watching, everyone. See ya. Bye.